introduce to you then the Regulators Panel. And I think we have Camilla Rosenberg, CEO of the Swedish regulator, with us. Hello, Camilla.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and we have Yanica Sant from the Malta Gaming Authority. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And we are waiting for Isabelle Falque-Pierrotin, who is the president of the French regulator. But I think we can continue discussing Camilla and Yanica, and I'll make a note when Isabelle is joining us. Well, you heard the question from Chris. Who would like to answer that? I see, Camilla, you nodded the head, so why don't you start?
Yes, absolutely. With the very recently implemented re-regulation behind us that has been evaluated from the start, and as we speak, we have not been focused on AI and the possibilities that comes with that technology. But of course, there is a lot to be done in the future, and I think we really need to step forward in this area. We need to improve when it comes to know-how and to make use of the technology to improve supervision and, of course, our knowledge of the market.
Yanica, do you think it's tough to regulate an industry that is creative and fast-moving?
Yes. The simple answer would be yes. But as challenging as it is, I would say that regulators, in order to make sure that they are achieving their objectives, that is to keep gambling free from crime, to have players who are protected, to make sure that the game is fair and safe, then they should embrace technology. And the fact that the industry in itself is fast moving and of course creative is not a bad thing. I think technology needs to be embraced in the sense that we need to encourage operators to take up this technology, to take up AI, for example, in order to achieve their legislative obligations and their license obligations. But the regulator itself should not rule out taking on these tools and this innovation itself. I mean, the regulator too has an obligation, in my opinion, to be creative because, first of all, it helps in understanding the industry and in understanding that the tools that the industry is making use of. And also, they would make our lives easier and would make sure that we are in a better position to regulate. So we are regulating more effectively, perhaps. So it's a challenge, but it's definitely not impossible. It just makes our job challenging, and it also means that we should be taking on these creative tools ourselves.
Okay. Well, this is a pretty good one, actually. What role do you both see regulators taking in collecting and processing data from operators? Will there be a time when we can identify a problem gambler before they start gambling? Camilla, it's all yours.
Yes, I think it's most likely that there will be a time when we can identify a problem gambler even before they start gambling. As we heard earlier today, we as customers are easy to predict. Already today, you can predict what a person will buy based on previous purchases and behaviors. But our role as a regulator may be collecting data from the operators when it comes to supervision. In gambling measures, it will be even more important in the future.
How far are we from that solution, would you say?
I think it's quite many steps ahead of us since we just barely started looking into this field.
And I would like to welcome Isabelle Falque-Pierrotin, who is now with us. Do you hear us clearly and do you see us?
Yes, I do.
Very much welcome,
Good
Isabelle.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. I continue with my questions here. I know that you are very interested in this, and we are continuing with the next question here, talking about responsibility. What should be the responsibility of the individual operators, and what should be the responsibility of the national regulator? Should national regulators collect, store and share data on customers' gambling behavior? Who wants to answer that one?
Well, I can start again if possible. I think in Sweden, privacy, the personal integrity, is of great importance to both the politicians and the public as well. So I think it's very unlikely that we as a national regulator in Sweden should be allowed by the parliament to collect, store and share such huge amount of data on customers' gambling behavior. So with that in mind, the individual operator is most likely to be responsible for collecting that data. But in order for the operators to do so, it must be regulated by law.
Yanica, do you have any comments on that one?
Yeah, very similar to the comment my colleague just said, to be honest. It would depend on the confines of our legislation, of course, and the confines of European privacy legislation. But wherever the regulator can help out with the sharing and collection of data, then it should be in a position to do so.
I know that in Sweden we have a national self-exclusion list called the Spelpaus.se. Camilla, do you see any possibility to use the data collected through Spelpaus to increase knowledge about gambling behavior?
Spelpaus could very well in the future be used to increase knowledge about gambling behavior. We as a regulator have only access to aggregated data at present. We don't know on the individual level which persons who have signed up for the system. As of today, we have no ongoing sharing of data with research or operators, but we are looking into the possibilities when it comes to research. And as of today, we can, on an aggregated level, get information on sex and age of the individuals and for how long time they have signed up for the system. But Spelpaus can, of course, be developed with additional data, but that is something that can't be decided by us as a regulator alone. Once again, the processing of personal data needs to be regulated by law.
Yanica, any comments on that?
Okay, so we don't have a self-exclusion single database for online, but we do have it for land-based. But in any case, I mean, if we are in a position where we have access to certain data and we are able to share it in order to obtain a better standard of player protection or regulation in general, then we should do so. We also encourage operators to share their data, for example, with academics where possible, so that they can achieve better information on the market to be able to identify problem gamblers before they develop a problem. So we believe in the sharing of data, but always, of course, within the confines of the law. And sometimes it is enough that data is aggregated and is not identifiable per individual, so that we are, of course, respecting individuals' privacy, but still achieving our objectives. I do not think that privacy law in and of itself is necessarily a hurdle or a burden. I think that we can work our way around it and still respect privacy, but also achieve our objectives.
Okay, but do you agree that regulators can make use of AI to improve your supervision in the future? I mean, could this improve even your operations in the long terms?
Yeah, definitely. We are at the moment we are actually studying the use of AI in improving our operations, and I foresee that we will be making use of it in the very near future. Of course, it is the application of AI in this field, especially for regulators, perhaps rather new. So it would take some time in order to find the tool that is best suited for our operations. That is regulatory supervision, of course. But yes, I think that in the near future, we will be making use of AI. And of course, as I said before, it is very important for operators to embrace this technology and not just for regulators to embrace this technology, and not just let the operators do so by themselves, because also it is important for us to understand what the operator is making use of.
Yeah. Isabelle, you have been listening now for a couple of minutes. What are your reflections and thoughts on AI and the possibilities to increase this sustainability of the gambling industry? Can you sort of sum up your thoughts here?
Thank you, and hello to the others. Maybe first a reflection on the subject you just mentioned, which is collecting data in order to identify better the problematic gamblers. As you may know, in France, we now have a new legal obligation for the operators, that is to identify these players. And to do so, they have various indicators. And of course, we can help as regulators, the operators, to combine the various indicators in order to better identify these problematic players. But we have to keep in mind, as it was mentioned, that it has to be GDPR compliant. And the players in particular have to be informed that they may be part of this identification scheme. And we are right now building a reference framework for the fight against addiction, and a section of this reference framework deals with the particular subject of identifying the problematic gamblers. And so we are suggesting various parameters in the trade relationship, in the way the person is gambling. So various indicators allowing the knowledge of having a problematic gambler. So I think regulators they don't have to identify the players. They have to control the way these players are identified by the operators themselves. Having said that, if we speak now on AI, I believe that AI tool can be very useful both for regulators and for operators, and but under certain conditions, I would say. First, it is of course privacy laws to be respected. And I think it's not only an external constraint. If we don't respect these privacy laws, we are in a position to be criticized by the gamblers and to have a sort of negative reaction against all these obligations. So I believe it's in the interest eventually of the operators. And also I believe that these AI tools for regulators or for operators, they have to be under human control. They won't give a sort of automatic solution to the questions we have. They can help our decision-making process, but they don't prevent us to have a human analysis and a human arbitration, you see, on the situation we're dealing with. So we are starting our reflection on these AI tools. We don't have any particular AI tool to recommend to the operators, but in the future, probably even in our own practice, we will try maybe to use these tools, or at least to improve our the automatic search we do, for instance, against sports manipulation, in order to identify the dubious bets. If we had a clever AI tool, we could probably improve the fight against these illegal bets and these sports manipulation. So there are various fields in which we could use this AI tool, and I'm sure that in the future it could be of any help.
Thank you, Isabelle. Now, the final question to all three of you is actually, what can you bring to the table in order to facilitate and create a sustainable gambling market? You have talked about a lot of challenges, but what can you bring in order to get there faster to solve this matter? Camilla or Yanica? Camilla?
I can go.
Yeah, Yanica,
okay, you
please.
Can go first.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the most important and where we should leave from is the fact that regulators should be in a position to collaborate with one another and also to share information between one another, especially when it comes to best practices, information on regulation, etc. Because we should be learning from one another, especially in light of the challenges brought about by such a fast-paced industry. We should also never lose sight of the regulatory objectives of keeping gambling sustainable, fair, and free from crime.
So collaborate more, Yanica. That is your conclusion to this. Yes. And Camilla?
I think we have to have an open mind, as been mentioned earlier as well, and to actually do everything that is in our power to have focus on these possibilities when AI can be used, both in the supervision and, of course, in detecting crime in different areas in the future. And also very interested in collaboration with the other authorities, of course, and also with the operators to understand the market and to understand what possibilities will be possible in the future.
So collaborate and open-minded. Isabelle, do you agree?
Yes, I fully support the idea that we need to better collaborate between European or even worldwide regulators, because we have to give a competitive advantage to the legal operators in difference with the illegal operators. So if we could more collaborate in order to fight against illegal offers, I'm sure it would benefit to the market.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Isabelle, Camilla, and Yanica, and good luck. Thank you for being with us.